It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. Andy Kindler is a stand-up comedian. He's also the host of the Hulu TV series Coming to the Stage, stand-up showcase. And besides that, he's also kind of comedy's ombudsman. Every year since 1996, Andy has taken the stage at the Just for Laughs Festival in Montreal to give what he calls his State of the Industry address. Andy gets in front of a giant crowd of stand-ups and comedy industry people and basically puts everyone on blast. And doing that has given Andy a reputation as being sort of a comics comic. And also the fact that he is stylistically kind of a comics comic. Of course, the speech is also really, really funny. It gets a huge crowd every year. Here's a little bit from the State of the Industry speech that Andy gave last year.
The state of our industry is strong. The state of our industry is funny. I'm very excited this year. I'm never excited, so when I say that, that's just a way of whipping up fake enthusiasm. This year I'm announcing that I'm finally going to take my career public. And I'm also planning there will be a hostile takeover by my bitterness. Come on, it's a business joke. I have a new stage name. I call myself the Antichrist. Turning water into wine. W-H-I-N-E. Thank you, Josh. Elvis Weinstein wrote that joke. Why am I giving anybody credit? I'm not doing well. Why should I help him?
Andy Kindler, welcome to Bullseye.
Thank you very much.
It's nice to see you. I saw you take a note during the course of that. Was there a joke that you had told that you liked?
Well, first of all, I wrote the joke, take my career public, but I never got the double entendre that my career is at such a low level that nobody's seen it. Now, that just shows you either the genius of comedy writing or that I am a savant of some type. Because I just saw it as a Wall Street joke. But now people were laughing because they realized that it's another self-deprecation bit.
I have never seen you do more than, say, 5 minutes on stage without being upset about a joke that you've told, or, I mean, I guess maybe not that if you were talking specific, if you were doing jokes about how badly your career was going, but mostly you're upset about the joke that you just told.
Mostly I'm upset. Well, I've realized from watching other comedians, and if I've repeated anything I've said before, why would you listen to me before and now listen to me now? I only want people who have never heard me before.
You just want one shot.
To listen to this spot. If you've heard me before, take your kids out of the room. No, what was the question?
The question was, I don't think I've ever heard you talk for 5 minutes without starting to talk about how badly a joke had just gone.
Right. Well, I noticed from watching other comedians in the audience that comedians in general, not all comedians, but comedians in general always think they're doing worse than they're doing. And I am the prime committer of that crime, whatever that word would be. I always think I'm doing worse. Now, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm just having fun, and I know I'm doing well, and who cares? But if I don't know what it is in my mind that how I wanted people to react to comedy when I first started, but I wanted them, I guess, to just like their faces to break out into like knowing, like enlightened laughing. So, but the concept of commenting on it is something I've always done from the very first time I did stand-up. I've just gotten better at commenting over the years. Because the first time I did stand-up and I did a joke and it didn't work, I went, wow, that joke did not go over well.
Let's talk about your place in the industry.
Okay.
One of your places in the industry, in the comedy industry specifically, is that every year you go to the Just for Laughs Festival and deliver this speech on the state of comedy. This speech is a combination of a sincere assessment of where comedy is at, you can put that at 20%, and 80%, well, we'll say 50% jokes at the expense of Jay Leno, and then 30% critiques of the world of comedy.
Right.
How did you get started doing this?
Well, let's just say when you ask me what my place is in show business, as you're saying that, not all I'm thinking, but it does occur to me that until the contract is signed for this year, I can't even say I'm going back this year. So it's like, I assume it's going to be every year, but there's a part of me that from being in a horrible business, money-wise, except for 4 people, you always are nervous that you're not going to get invited back. But that being said, it has been a long time, so I assume I'm going this year. What happened was I had written an article for National Lampoon called Hack Comics Handbook, and it is still on my website. Nothing else has been updated on my website, so why should it? Well, what do you need to know? What do you need to know is basically the attitude of my website.
So that article came out in the
91.
early 1990s, 1991.
Right before the implosion.
Yeah, so there had been this huge comedy boom in the 1980s that led to 75 television programs that featured stand-up comedy and a profusion of new comedy clubs and an explosion of hack stand-up.
Right.
And then, right when you wrote that article, pretty much, it all collapsed in on itself. People just got bored of it.
Yeah, well, you can imagine under any circumstances that movement would have had to have ended, because there just couldn't be a artistic demand that there be 5,000 clubs in a town and they all have 3 comics on a show. They just couldn't sustain that kind of thing under any circumstances. You can point to a lot of historical things. Letterman, all those people in the 70s, they spawned the comedy boom of the 80s. And so that's why, but then that's why it happened. So what happened was that you have more comedians than you could have good comics to fill these clubs. And then the club owners, all they cared about was making money and making sure the crowds were happy.
And I think to some extent, and, I'll grant you, Andy, I was 11 years old, so I wasn't at the clubs.
I think you were 11 years old when I first met you in the 90s in San Francisco.
To be fair, I might have been 19 years old.
But you were very, very, you were young and full of beans. That's how I remember.
Thank you. I choose
in a good way, I'm saying.
Okay, good.
Did it sound iffy?
No.
Yeah.
But I'll take it.
But I would say you were precocious, even.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. No, you're welcome.
So I think in the early 1990s, another thing that was going on was part of this business model was a sort of, hey, you haven't seen comedy before. This is comedy. It's fun. And when an audience has seen that a couple of times, has seen that hack comic pushing their sleeves up, that is no longer as effective as it once was. And so that audience that has wandered into a comedy club to see comedy, just
right.
the general idea of comedy, that no longer works for them, and everything falls in on itself. Yeah,
and you can't perpetuate an art form that's based on come see the comedy without knowing even what you're seing. I always use the analogy of movie. No one ever says, come to the movie theater. Well, what's playing? What do you care? you like movies, right? Why don't you bring down you've won. I used to do this joke. You've won our Answer the Phone contest. Congratulations. Would you like to bring you and 50 people who know less than you about comedy to the club? Oh, great. Oh, hi, bachelorette party. Thanks for calling. Yes, we'd love to have your party here in our club. We'd love to make the comedy the second most or the third most important thing after drinks and your bachelorette party.
I want to play a clip from the first time that you did this State of the Industry address. It's just been re-released. This was a little bit more than 20 years ago in 1996. And even then, you were talking about Jay Leno.
Well, first of all, they just offered Jay Leno $4 million to write a book. This is the new thing now. I think Whoopi got $8 million. Everybody's getting millions of dollars to write a book. And they offered Jay Leno $4 million. Jay Leno, who needs 18 writers to come up with a Kevorkian joke. All right? He's going to write a book. Chapter 1. In medical news, Chapter 2. McDonald's is a situation there. It's unbelievable. Chapter 3. And finally,
Jay Leno is a big puppet, okay? You can play around with the hair and you can move the strings, but he's going to be a puppet for the next 40 years. Get used to it, enjoy it, have a hot toddy, and enjoy him, because it's over.
I think by the 21st century, Jay Leno was a commonly accepted cultural punching bag, if a very successful one. In 1996, maybe a little bit less so. There was still a lot of memories of Jay Leno, legendary stand-up comedian of the 1970s and 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think amongst so many comics had turned on him by then. So amongst comics, he wasn't popular. I don't even think he was that nice to the people he came up with. He wasn't like Dennis Miller, who's just everyone before he even became a right-wing more. I don't want to use the word moron. But even before that, everyone knew this guy's an unpleasant person. You never hear a story. You've met Dennis Miller? Oh my God, this is the sweetest guy in the world. He gave me a lift to my violin lessons. I only took violin lessons, so that's why I said that. But no, Jay Leno had the reputation of being a nice guy, kind of. Although if you spoke to people who know Jay Leno, who I do know him, people knew him, he's a very vicious guy. Like, he'll make fun of other comics. And that's why in the 80s, he was funny. And, of course, I don't know if the irony is the right word, but he was the funniest when he went on Letterman. That was the worst part of him stabbing Letterman in the... What happened is he wanted to get into the stabbing people in the back business. He started with Letterman, and then years later, in his final stab in the back, he said, yeah, I'll retire in 5 years. Conan, sure, that sounds great. Yeah, I'll retire in 5 years. Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm happy to do it. You know me, company man. And you know what I'll do? I'll wait till everybody moves their family out here from New York to take over Tonight Show, and then I'll say, I don't want to go. So he stabbed Conan in the back. It's like, and the thing is that, and then, but he used to use Helen Kushnick as the excuse. Helen Kushnick was his manager, and there was that movie, The Late Shift, and whether you believe everything in that movie, I don't know. But the point is that something happened to him. I'm not a psychiatrist, but that doesn't stop me from diagnosing him. But he has that, I don't know what you call that kind of personality. It's not his real person. The thing that really bothered me most about him taking over the show, it was the fact that he has no interest other than cars, which he doesn't seem that interested in either. Have you ever seen that show where he talks about cars?
I watched that show. I watched his show about cars once for about an hour on an airplane.
And did he seem that interested even in that subject? He's more interested.
Yeah, well, he has a kind of light bouncing, skipping quality,
right?
Like a water slider or whatever those bugs are called that stand on top of the water tension. Like he's a good host.
Yes,
and he has that quality, kind of quality,
right?
That allowed me to watch the show for an hour.
Yes, and yes. So, well, that's the thing. You could never say this man isn't talented, but you could say that he's. You could say a lot of other negative things about him.
It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. I'm talking with comedian Andy Kindler. He's a stand-up. He also delivers an annual State of the Industry speech at the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival. It seems like the reason that Jay Leno became the leitmotif of these talks for 15 years is not so much because you don't think he has talent as because you think that he has betrayed his talent in some way.
I think that he's betrayed. In fact, without getting heavy, because I really don't want to be known as or see myself as the person who's trying to solve the problems of the world. I did that with warning people about Trump, and it didn't help. But the thing about it is I usually am hardest on people I did like. Like another example, Ricky Gervais. I loved The Office so much that I was like, Ricky Gervais, he's the king. Ricky Gervais, maybe I loved him too much. Maybe that's my own problem. Because people are funny, I want to like them too much. And so then when he came into all this other stuff, which is just basically that character, David Brent, is who he is, unfortunately. And that's not a joke. And then when he's just like, you go to his Twitter feed and half of his tweets are about how he's an atheist. The other half of his tweets are about how he doesn't care what people think about him, and then the other half of that adds up to a whole are just promo. Here's a guy, how rich? There's nobody probably richer than him because he has all these offices that started. There's an office in Hungary that they make. There's an office in Qatar that they make. And so this guy...
Let the record show for folks who are at home that Andy punctuated the word Qatar with an extended head askew take.
Also, I thought of doing a welcome back Qatar joke, but I know that's been done before. See, I at least know when things have been done before. And so this guy, his whole Twitter page, Ricky Gervais, is him retweeting other fan accounts of Ricky Gervais fan art. Oh, look what they've said about me. Maybe I should retweet that. Why is he promoting so hard? What is his problem? Why doesn't he go get help and leave the rest of it out of it? Because that's one of my current jokes from the current speech was, how much is Netflix without Derek and the Adam Sandler movies? Give me a price on that, a monthly price on Netflix if I don't want to watch Derek and I don't want to watch the Adam Sandler movie about Native Americans.
There's something of a sad idealist in this 1996 piece where you will just occasionally check in with Seinfeld, the TV show. And you'll say, well, there's Seinfeld. I do love Seinfeld.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's why it took me so long to get where I ever even had to say something negative about Seinfeld, which was a couple of years ago when he started to do that whole thing about I can't play colleges anymore, and all. You know, he launched into that because I love Seinfeld. I love the show Seinfeld, but I have never been a fan of Seinfeld talking about comedy because he's always, if you took the things that he said about comedy over the years and there was a trial, he would be guilty. Because he used to say, it's never the crowd, it's always the comic. A comic should be able to play any room whatsoever. It's always your fault, never the audience's fault. And then 3 years ago, because they didn't like his gay French, they didn't like his gay French king bit. They didn't fall over, doubled over when he said gay French king. Then he went the other way. I can't do comedy anymore with this PC world.
I want to play some more from Andy Kindler in 1996 in his very first State of the Industry address, the annual address that he gives at the Just for Laughs Festival in Montreal. And this is Andy talking a little bit about racism in Hollywood. And remember, this was 1996, the absolute high water mark for UPN sitcoms and other very broadly targeted...
WB, like the Wayans brothers.
Yeah. Let's take a listen.
There's so much racism in Hollywood. It's like whenever they describe like a black comic in the papers, you know, like a critic, it'll always be in terms of another black comic. How ridiculous is that? He had the good looks of Bill Cosby, the edge of Richard Pryor. They would never think of comparing a black comic to a white comic. Doesn't that seem sick to you on some level? Or do you agree with that? Do you believe that I should only be judged in terms of I have the looks of Myron Cohn?
I had forgotten about the entertainment context of 1996, and it all came rushing back to me when you, in this talk, talked about Homeboys from Outer Space. The network, I mean semi-network, but broadcast television sitcom, Homeboys from Outer Space.
I forgot that myself.
Which was a real thing that was really on television. I think in the speech you talk about the executives having said, you know, we just came up with that name at lunch.
Right. Well, the other thing is that what I was trying to bring attention to was racism that you don't even think about. So, like, if you're reading an article about a black comedian, they compare it to another black comedian, you might not think in your mind, you might, oh yeah, why not, right? But it's like, and the other example I used was when there would be a show where they have all black people and the show would fail, then show business would say, well, we tried the black people and it didn't work out. We tried. But meanwhile, a million white shows fell with all white people. They never draw the conclusion. You know what the problem with this show was? There were too many white people. And that actually could have been a proper conclusion. You could probably just make a rule of cutting back on the white people and improve any project 50%.
Here's my question for you, Andy. You've been doing these State of the Industry addresses for more than 20 years now.
Correct.
Do you feel like you have learned or achieved something by doing them?
I think so, because I've had to confront every one of my emotional problems through this speech. So whether my emotional problem is that I want to be able to say things about people but then have them still like me, or that I had to wrestle, like that I had to learn that the funnier things were more like I used to love when Letterman would make a mean joke and then he would say, "I'm sorry, I thought this was a roast." So I did learn over the years that the ones that are more roast-like I had a joke about Jay Leno's in the Guinness Book of Records for going the longest period of time without having an authentic moment. Those jokes tend to work better than when it's just pure anger. But then I also learned about being purely angry. I also learned about being scared when I talked about Anthony Camilla that one year, and I got back to LA, and people were sending me concentration camp pictures on Twitter. So I learned everything. It's been the major on years when I couldn't do anything. A couple years ago, my dad passed, and all of a sudden I got to this point where I was just paralyzed. I couldn't do anything, but I always had to write this speech. So it almost got me through really bad times too. So yeah, I mean, I'm really thankful for everything that I've done, except I wish if I had gotten paid 3 times as much every year for the speech, $100,000, or maybe that's not 3 times as much, that I could retire. Why could a man like me retire on a speech like that? Why can't that speech be turned into a cottage industry? Why am I working so hard?
I never do this, but can I set you up for a joke from your act?
Mm-hmm. I hope I remember it.
Do you feel like you have a core demographic?
Yes. I believe that my target audience, I did some research studies and groups, and we found out that my target audience is men my age who are me. Men my age who are me. Also, my advice to people to get into the show business: take the high road. No traffic.
Oh, bless you, Andy Kindler. Thank you so much for coming on Bullseye.
Thank you. I love your show. I listen to it all the time.
Oh.
It cheers me up. And I literally am amazed at how much you know. Well, maybe it's because I know so little about everything. But you know so much about, especially music. It's incredible.
I'm faking it, Andy.
You know about hip-hop. I don't know about my idea of don't push me because I'm close to the edge. That's the last hip hop. No, I know a little bit about hip hop. I'm just amazed, and I'm very excited to and you cheer me up when I'm down, and you are the wind beneath my Jew.
Thank you, Andy. You're the wind beneath my goy.
Thank you for having me.
Andy Kindler. His latest record is a recording of his 1996 State of the Industry address. It's out now. Listen to it. Hear Dave Chappelle ask a question from the back. Make sure you catch him on Hulu's Coming to the Stage. And if you want to see Andy give his 2017 State of the Industry speech, you've still got time. It's going down in July in Montreal. Ticket info on our website. Find the Bullseye page at MaximumFun.org.